Hi, welcome to another episode of V's Perspective. In this episode, we'll look at the upcoming Putin Donald Trump meeting in Alaska. Two or three important contexts to this meeting is, of course, the fact that this war has been prolonged more than it should have, and I think in that context you have um, a meeting coming up with the possibility that things could calm down, and I think that's one of the most anticipated decisions, or one of the most stark anticipations or important anticipations of the upcoming meeting. Second, I think the Donald Trump administration has been back channeling with Russia and had sent Steve Witkoff to Moscow, and I think um, clearly there's a meeting that is happening in Moscow on the behest of both of these parties. Unlike as Trump claims that only Russia wants this meeting, I think both the actors in this decision in this meeting are equally keen to get to Alaska. Third, I think what's important is that the Donald Trump administration is seeking this meeting for various reasons. If you look at the concomitant developments around this meeting or before this meeting, he's clearly trying to work up leverage for this meeting. So you have Armenia, Azerbaijan, where Armenia used to be closer to Russia, Soviet Union earlier, um, and of course Russia's distraction in the war in Ukraine has led to a little detachment with Armenia, and that politics is really playing out. So Donald Trump really found an opportunity to sort of ask Armenia or come up with the Armenia-Azerbaijan deal, which really signals that the United States has leverage in Armenia more than Russia has today. So that's one. Second, you see that Donald Trump has been after conflict resolution like no precedent in the US history has. How much is that effective remains to be seen. How much some of these ceasefire which have been achieved, for example, the Armenia Azerbaijan uh, deal, remains to be seen. But there's also a context that Armenia and Azerbaijan were talking to themselves much before Trump really compelled them to come to the table. So that's another point. Next is the fact that Trump is, as he's nearing, or as he was anticipating and building up on this meeting in Alaska, he's trying to create external leverage. So the tariffs on India is an important part of that leverage. He's trying to put tariffs on countries which have leverage, friendship, talking terms with Russia and Moscow, and essentially sending a signal to Russia that their secondary sanctions could really impact their oil trade and their energy trade if they do not agree to this decision. Um, Now, out of that conversation, out of that anticipation, one of the most important things to remember is that um, you know, bullying tactics do not work with great powers, especially civilizational powers, and especially leaders or state leaders who have a complete opposite understanding of how the world should be or how their geography should be. So, in that context, if the Donald Trump administration is really thinking that there will be a solution, and Trump and Putin will agree to certain demands, I think that's a little overambitious. But here's what could happen. One is there could be a land deal, to which, of course, and what kind of land deal remains to be seen, because I think the Ukrainian side has already rejected a certain version of land swap because, Zelensky has cited his constitution to say that the constitution doesn't allow any land swap and giving away of sovereignty. Um, f- but but perhaps that's the only way at this point to resolve this conflict, or at least bring a ceasefire. I think resolution is a long is a far cry at this moment. But I think at what could happen really is a intermediate ceasefire, and that ceasefire will most likely happen based on a certain kind of exchange of territory. Um, so Donetsk and Luhansk and Zaporizhia, I think how that'll play out, the four regions, remains to be seen. Third, I think this meeting between Putin and Trump is also important because it gives us important signal that for the first time Putin may be sitting at the table, or maybe ready to sit at so maybe ready to sit at the table. So I think that's a significant development in itself, which means that if right words are chosen and if the right options are presented at the table, then I think there could be options. Then I think Russia could come to a deal. Third, I think Putin. What could happen if there is a ceasefire today? The fighting stops. Then I think you will see more investments uh, and more economic relations between Moscow and the United States going forward, which might speed up quickly in all kinds of deal. So you will see two actual relations from Washington, one to Ukraine and one to Russia, and you know a an upping of the economic ante, as it were, could happen, and that's not a bad thing. I think in terms of given the circumstances that we have today. Third, I think the deal could really falter. This anticipated deal that Putin is trying to that Russia is trying to I'm sorry, that Trump is trying to achieve might just fall through the cracks because of the intractability of the exchanges that is offered on the table, and whether or not one party or the second party agrees to it. And I think that's the more complicated part and has a high probability that this deal might fall through the cracks simply because of intransigence on both sides. So what Trump achieves remains to be seen. It is a conflict that has gone on for more than 3 years, and therefore as we all anticipate that this war comes to an end, the intractability of it is something that we'll watch out for. Thank you.